Hey, what is up, mortals? Tim here. And before we get into the video, there are a few things I'd like to say. First off, I'd like to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time, so if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Pokemon timelines, the most confusing thing ever to be invented. But hey, we're doing it because deep dive. Just a note, this history is based on the games, not the anime. I just wanted to get that out there first. Also, a second notice. There won't be too many time dates because we don't get that information in the games at all. If we want to get the full picture of the timeline, well, we will just have to go back to when time and space weren't even invented. Right to the very beginning of the universe itself. In a vortex of complete chaos and nothingness, a single egg comes into being. This was the first ever Pokemon to exist, and that Pokemon was called Arceus. Arceus created Dialga, giving it the power over time, Palkia, giving it the power over space, and Giratina, the power over antimatter. Giratina, as a punishment for its destructive nature, was banished to the Distortion World by Arceus. Soon after, Palkia and Dialga forged the universe and Pokemon world, before heading back to their own dimension, with the Spear Pillar in the Sinnoh region being the only accessible point. The ancient Sinnoh people would dub Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina the Creation Trio. After the creation of the universe and the Pokemon world, Arceus crafts Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, giving knowledge, emotion, and willpower to all the Pokemon in the world. The three dive into caves at the bottoms of Lake Verity, Lake Valor, and Lake Aquity in Sinnoh, giving them the name Lake Guardians. Sometime later in the Hoenn region, Kyogre was formed under the high pressures of the sea, Groudon was formed deep inside the earth from the magma, and Rayquaza was formed by minerals on the ozone layer, where it continues to reside, sometimes coming to the Sky Pillar to rest. Kyogre and Groudon then proceed to fill the sea and raise the land, respectively. A chance meeting turns the two into rivals, and conflict for dominance over the Pokemon world begins. This battle continues until Rayquaza quells it, causing Kyogre and Groudon to retreat to special caverns, where they rest until the events of Generation 3, many years later. The red and blue orbs are created to prevent the reawakening of Kyogre and Groudon, and are left at Mount Pyre for safekeeping. At this time, it is thought Mew may have been plentiful and lived in large numbers. Mount Coronet is formed, and Regigigas moves the continents, making the regions and creating the three Titans, Regirock, Regice, and Registeel out of clay, ice, and magma. The Sinnoh region is created around Mount Coronet. During this violent procedure, Stark Mountain is created due to shifts in the crust of the world, and Heatran is formed in a pool of lava. Around this time, Arceus creates the Adamant, Lustrous, and Griseous orbs before falling into a deep slumber. A couple millions of years later, we land in the Prehistoric timeline, which is primarily about the origins of all fossil Pokemon and some other origins. Millions of years before Kanto, the earliest prehistoric Pokemon existed at this time. It is possible that the Mew population started to decline, giving birth to all the other Pokemon we know and love today. Also, the earliest humans started to appear in the Pokemon world during this time frame. Around this time, Anorith is said to have lived in primordial seas with 8 legs and at some point developing 8 wings. 300 million years before Kanto, an ancient version of Genesect was born. This later leads to Team Plasma using Genesect's DNA to create an infinitely stronger version of it, with cybernetic enhancements. Hundreds of years later, Carbink begins its undisturbed underground sleep after its birth. It was born from deep underground temperatures and pressures. 100 million years before Kanto, many new Pokemon such as Aerodactyl, Lileep, Cranidos, Shieldon, Tirtuga, Arcan, Tyrantrum, and Amora were widespread throughout the world. All of these Pokemon went extinct, but not before Arcan and Tirtuga gave rise to all bird and turtle Pokemon, respectively. 20,000 years before Kanto, a meteorite containing Eternatus fell in the Galar region. And around the same time, the first clay doll was brought to life from a clay doll. 10,000 years before Kanto, during the last Ice Age, the Mamoswine population had flourished, then decreased when the Ice Age ended. At some point in the distant past, the Magikarp population mutates due to unknown reasons and becomes weaker. At some point after the Iron Age, Regigigas is sealed away in the Snow Point Temple, and Regirock, Regice, and Registeel are sealed away at various points across the Hoenn region after years of human worship. 3,000 years before Kalos, a large ultimate weapon was made in Geosenge Town, and Az was given immortality. The ultimate weapon gets fired during a great Pokemon war, leading to the end of the war and also leading to the discovery of Mega Evolution, making the Mega and non-Mega timeline, which we will talk about further in a different video. 3,000 years before the Galar region, a black storm called the Darkest Day was stopped by Zacian and Zamazenta. 2,500 years before Unova, the Relic Castle was built and the Dragon Spiral Tower was made during this time. 2,000 years before Unova, Conkeldurr teaches humans how to make concrete with centrifugal force. About 1,000 years before the events of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, during an event called Meteor Falls, a meteor struck Hoenn, creating Sotopolis City. Groudon and Kyogre reawakened to fight over the wellspring of primal energy that came from it. The people of Hoenn wished on Rayquaza to save them, and using the meteor, Rayquaza performed the world's first Mega Evolution and calmed the two. The Sky Pillar was built in Rayquaza's honor, and the Draconid people promised to pass down the prophecy that in 1,000 years, the meteor would return, causing the events of the Delta episode. 800 years before X and Y, Xerneas released life energy throughout the Kalos region and fled to a forest, where it went to sleep in the shape of a tree. Yveltal absorbed life energy throughout the Kalos region and fled to the mountains, where it went to sleep in the shape of a cocoon. Now we move on to the recent history timeline that takes place only a couple of hundred years before the main games. Hundreds of years before Johto, the Sinjoh ruins were built by two groups of people, from Sinnoh and Johto's Ruins of Alph. The site's architecture expresses a fusion of the two groups' ideas and mythology. 700 years before Kanto, the Bell Tower and Brass Tower were constructed in Ecruteak City, and Lugia and Ho-Oh perched at their tops. Now, several events happen about 500 years before Kanto, such as the first Spiritomb gets sealed away in the Hallowed Tower for its unforgivable misdeeds. The Xian Wood City Pharmacy was also built around this time. The guardian deities, Tapu Koko, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Fini, and Tapu Lele fought against Solgaleo and Lunala. Later around this period, Magearna is created by an alchemist who used the life energy of other Pokemon to create its Soul Heart, and is presented to a king's daughter. About 400 years before Kanto, Azalea Town in Johto was struck by a long-term drought. After bringing the rain back once again by yawning, Slowpoke gains an honorable position in that town. During this time, the infamous move Toxic was invented by an anonymous ninja. 300 years before X and Y, Parfum Palace is built. 200 years before the events of Unova, a village bridge was constructed by a man and his girder after the river flooded the area. The island that the bridge was made would become the Liberty Garden that was bought by an ultra-rich family and contains Victini hidden in a back room. About 150 years before Kanto, the Brass Tower burns to the ground, killing 3 Pokemon inside. Lugia then flees to the Whirl Islands while Ho-Oh resurrects the 3 as the legendary beasts and flies off in search of a pure-hearted trainer. Kanto, 1925. The modern Pokeballs were developed from the research of Professor Westwood of Celadon University. In 1969, the first humans landed on the moon, which is a reference to the Apollo 11 mission. Now, with all the locations out of the way, let's talk about when some of the main characters of each game were born. 12 years before Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Brendan and May were born. 11 years before the events of the Pokemon Red and Green games, Red and Green were born. During this time frame, the Lit Leonid meteor shower passes by Hoenn for the last time before Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. 10 years before the events of Omega Ruby and Sapphire, the young timid boy Wally is born. Around this same time, the old Pokemon centers in Hoenn are remodeled, removing the second floor and the Pokemon Cable Club. 20 years before the events of Sun and Moon, the first Pokemon created by scientific engineering, Porygon, was created. Finally, less than 10 years before Generation 1, the Fairy, SS Tidal, is constructed, and Rotom inhabits an abandoned mansion in Sinnoh. Now, with all the lore that we know of is out of the way, let's move towards the main series events. Let's call this time the Modern Timeline. Before we get into the main timeline, there's a couple of minor events that we will quickly go over first. Some years before Generation 1, a team of scientists discovers a new Pokemon in the jungle of Guyana on July 5th. They named the Pokemon Mew on July 10th. Using Mew's DNA, the scientists created Mewtwo, born on February 6th. Enraged by the scientists' treatment upon it, Mewtwo escapes from and destroys Cinnabar Island's Pokemon Mansion on September 1st, and hides away in Cerulean Cave. Sabrina's gym is declared the official gym of Saffron City after a Pokemon battle between Sabrina and the leader of the Fighting Dojo. Giratina returns to the Pokemon world, and the battle resort opens in Hoenn. The Goldenrod radio tower is torn down due to being old and creaky. During the process, the radio tower director comes across the Clear Bell, which he keeps for the time being. A new Goldenrod radio tower is built in its place. Then around this time, the construction of the Royal Unova begins. 1 year before Kanto starts, Professor Rowan, one of the professors of the Sinnoh region, goes to Kanto to study mythical Pokemon. Overall, the Pokemon world has tons of history to it, and we have just scratched the surface of it. We will continue the next part of this anime deep dive that will talk about main series games and where they take place. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer of this video, as well as the editor of this video. Their details will be in the description below. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you like the video. Until next time, peace out, mortals!
In the sky, gazing far into the night.